Recently, Brad Bird, the director of The Incredibles 2, had to come to the defense of his movie when a concerned parent complained on Twitter about a swear word being in what he considered to be a kid's movie. Now, Mr. Bird... Brad? I don't feel like we're on a first-name basis. The director responded in very clear terms that The Incredibles 2 was an animated film rated PG and not a kid's movie. He then went on to further the point by lamenting how often audiences, and even critics, shove animated movies into the terribly uncomfortable pen of being kids' movies. All of that reminded me of a popular C.S. Lewis quote. He said, "No book is really worth reading at the age of 10, which is not equally and often far more worth reading at the age of 50 and beyond." That's to say that if something being labeled as for kids means that it is basic, simple, and without depth, then something that is labeled as for kids really has no value. And that makes designated animated movies as for kids all the worse. Because it means that person thinks that all an animated movie can ever aspire to be is a piece of cheap entertainment to distract children. If a kid's movie means a story devoid of any meaning, excluding any challenging ideas or swear words, and filled with Patrick Stewart poop jokes, then the best animated movie of all time is the Emoji Movie. And we all know that just ain't right. Or to quote C.S. Lewis again, because he apparently had a lot of thoughts on this topic, a story worth reading only in childhood is not worth reading even then. The point is, not only do people need to rethink how they define and engage with animated movies, they also need to re-examine how they think about children's movies. Because, at the end of the day, we remember and love good stories, no matter who they're written for. Think of the great animated movies, the ones that really mattered. They're not just mundane stories that trade on being colorful, digital equivalents of a Transformers movie. They don't feature characters shallower than a child-safe wading pool, and they certainly provide us with a deeper meaning than just blow up the big grey bad guy. In effect, a good animated movie is usually miles better than a popular blockbuster that is, quote-unquote, for adults. But you don't have to take my word for it. Let's look at some of Brad Bird's movies as examples. First up, The Iron Giant. This one is on many people's best movies of all time list, and it's easy to see why. With themes of anti-violence coming into conflict with the real-world issues of the military-industrial complex using security as an excuse for more guns and more war, it's a film that is especially relevant these days. Throw in a heartwarming and then wrenching friendship between the Iron Giant and real human boy Hogarth, and it's a movie that has both something to say and will leave you in tears.
Superman.
That's certainly not kids only. Then there's The Incredibles, which tackles toxic fan culture and features several harrowing murders, along with the threat of a baby murder. It's dark, and it's disturbing, and it's not just for kids. Finally, Ratatouille, which is my favorite. For reasons. Not only is this a story whose message of following your passions and dreams no matter who you are or where you come from, inspiring for people of all ages, the main character's rat tribe literally has to escape mass genocide in the movie's opening minutes. Fun for kids, but not just for them. And before you chime in saying that clearly Brad Bird is the exception to the rule, before you say everyone else's animated movies are just for kids, here are a few highlights I love that all have deeper meanings, great characters, and potentially terrifying stories. Moana. A young girl has to save her island from the literal embodiment of climate change, and she does so by following her heart and solving the crisis through harmony and not through violence. The Hunchback of Notre Dame. In the first few minutes, Quasimodo is almost baby murdered by creepy old white man Frollo, who spends the rest of the movie lusting after a much younger woman, setting the entire city of Paris on fire to find her. He's eventually defeated by Quasimodo, who is embraced by the people of Paris despite what he looks like, because you matter, no matter who you are. Kubo and the Two Strings. Really creepy murder ninja gods spend the movie trying to kill Kubo while he grows to accept the passing away of his parents. It teaches us about mourning and how those who love us will always be with us. And I could go on, probably for a couple of hours, but I think you get the point. Great animated movies are just great movies. You don't need to label them for kids, and you don't need to say that dreaded phrase. It's good for an animated movie. Every year, new, great animated movies come out, and they're always in my top films at the end of the year. That's because they understand and put into practice our C.S. Lewis quotes from the beginning of this video. To make a story worth telling to a child, it also needs to be worth telling to an adult. When creators set themselves that standard, they're able to reach much higher as art than the average movie that is designated, quote-unquote, for adults. They have deeper themes, more meaningful dialogue, and characters we can empathize with even if they're nothing like us. Whether they're rats, toys, or bell-ringing hunchbacks, we feel for and identify with them all. So our perception just needs to change. Because not only are animated movies not just for kids, they're some of the best movies around. And for a perfect example of a children's story made for adults, relevant no matter how old you are, you need look no further than The Little Prince. Whether you're watching the animated movie or reading the original book, there is so much depth in the text of that story that I've made a 15-minute video about it, and I've barely scratched the surface. It's an incredible story that I can't recommend enough. Oh, and I've made videos about Moana and Kubo as well. So check them out!